The NCAA House settlement is done. Amateurism is officially dead. It's gone. The era of revenue sharing is here. We have a very simple A through Z explanation about what this means and how the Big Ten will come out of this stronger than all the other conferences. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hit that free subscribe button down below while you're watching. Share, like, and follow so you don't miss a single episode. By the way, making a push to 20,000 subscribers before football season if you could help us out with that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, the House settlement. What's next for the Big Ten? Plus, Michigan's NCAA Spygate hearing was this weekend, and we had a surprise witness. This will be fun. Plus our top 10 observations from the weekend as well. But you talk about a Friday night news dump going into the weekend. Late Friday night, Judge Claudia Wilkin finally approved the $2.8 billion House settlement between the NCAA, its power conferences, and lawyers representing past and present Division I athletes. The new era has begun where schools are now free to directly pay their athletes for their athletic services. In short, the settlement ends 3 individual federal antitrust lawsuits, which all claim that the NCAA illegally limited earning power of college athletes. So amateurism is officially dead. It's gone. It's done. Somewhere Newt Rockne is turning over in his grave. The idea that, hey, you're just going to give me a scholarship at your school, so I'll play football, and that's all I get. Those days are over. So, this deal will take nobody by surprise because it's been coming. It's been coming from, we've been seeing this. We've talked about it ad nauseum here on this podcast. It is finally a done deal. But it was supposed to come down in April, but delays of the details pushed the decision until the first week of June. And now athletic departments, they got to scramble to kick off the beginning of the July 1 fiscal year under the new rules of college athletics. Everybody's got to do it. So what does this mean? And who in the Big Ten is going to benefit from this most of all? We'll get to that. But the $2.8 billion includes back damages, the $2.8 billion back damages that will be paid out for the next 10 years to athletes who competed anytime from 2016 until present day. If you were an athlete that played in 2014, 2015, you're missing out. Got to cut it off somewhere, I guess. That means each of the power schools will have to pay $20.5 million per school beginning this year. That'll increase a little bit each year and give that money to athletes. Think of it as a salary cap, though. All right, the number this year is 20.5. Everybody's got to pay that. This is supposed to level the playing field so that one school can't go throwing $40 million around and the other one does 20. But we're going to get to that because there are ways around that. I don't think we're out of the woods on all that. So most of the money is going to go to football players, probably about 75% of it per school. It's up to each school to decide. About 15% will go to basketball players, and the rest is going to be sprinkled. I mean, some schools have like 30 other sports. There's not going to be much left for those athletes. These monies are going to be separate from those scholarships I just mentioned, going to be separate from name, image, and likeness, which has been in place since 2021, but now it'll be very regulated. We have oversight. We're going to get into that too. But name, image, and likeness has, in many cases, been turned into pay for play. It was never intended to be that, and now it's out of control, but maybe no longer. Schools were never allowed to tell an athlete, hey, you come play for us, I'll give you $3 million a year. They've never been able to. The athlete was supposed to, on his or her own, go get her name, image, and likeness deals, his name, image, and likeness deals on their own, separate from coming to school. So, but that's exactly what was happening. Schools were through their collectives and whatnot. All right, we'll get you this amount. You come play here. Moving forward, Athletes can still earn name, image, and likeness. They can still get their deals from their name, image, and likeness collectives and boosters, but it has to be for a valid business purpose. All right. And that's what it initially was intended to be. If a business wants to pay an athlete to make a paid public appearance, maybe a car dealer wants an athlete to show up on the parking lot, sell some cars, and you want to pay him for it, you can still do that. If another car dealership or a grocer or a store on campus wants an athlete to do a TV commercial for him and they want to pay him for it, you can still do that. That's still out there to be had. But the days are gone where an athlete just gets a chunk of money from a nil collective or booster to attend the school, and that's that. Don't even see you again. Now, you got to do something for the money. The NCAA was supposed to monitor such things, and they absolutely failed miserably. Some schools abided to this better than others. Some followed the rules better than others. But isn't that always the case with the NCAA, the schools of the NCAA? Within hours, though, of the House settlement, this was already put into motion. The new enforcement organization of college athletics called the College Sports Commission. Get used to that. You're going to hear that a lot. The College Sports Commission. They hired former MLB executive Brian Seeley as the CEO, and he's going to be the guy in charge of all this and making sure everybody's following the rules, and he's going to be the one who hands out the punishment for those that don't follow the rules. Think of him as an enforcement czar for revenue sharing, name, image, and likeness, and roster limits, which was another part of this settlement. This is the job that Charlie Baker and the NCAA failed to do miserably over the last 4 years. So now, look at the NCAA. They're basically relegated to issues of academics and athletic eligibility and trying to bust Michigan. We'll get to that later. So what does all this mean for the Big Ten and its 18 institutions? Well, you've heard the saying that the rich get richer, right? Well, this might be a case of the rich will be able to survive their new expenses and move on better than others. Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel says that these new changes will cost his athletic department an extra $50 million a year to implement. Now, $20.5 million is going to be the revenue sharing. How he gets to $50 million from there, I don't know. I don't see the numbers. But if those are his costs, I'm assuming that will be the case for Ohio State and Penn State and USC and so on. And it'll be presumed to be the case at Alabama and Georgia and Clemson. Name the power school, all in the same boat. College athletics is expensive, and it just got more expensive. That's for sure. And even though this settlement was supposed to even the playing field, in my opinion, this just means that schools that have the most money will come out of this the strongest. Look, some schools, it's going to be hard to come up with $20.5 million from their budgets. And this is where Big Ten schools have an advantage over everybody else because, first of all, they have the most lucrative TV rights deal. Big Ten schools soon will be receiving about $100 million each school per year. That's just a few years away as this TV deal moves up in increments of payments. And that's way ahead of their counterparts in the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC as well. So schools, Big Ten or not, let's take this in another direction, whether you're in the Big Ten or not. Schools that have, because I'm the TV part, that's a nice buffer. It's not an end-all be-all, but that puts the Big Ten in an advantageous position. Now, let's talk about name, image, and likeness and the collectives that are out there. They're going to remain, and those schools that have richly developed name, image, and likeness collectives, again, as long as the contracts with the athletes pass the scrutiny of the new enforcement organization of college athletics, the College Sports Commission, with the new czar, Brian Seeley, as long as it's all on the up and up and it's well developed, and you got cash flow coming in from boosters and donors and all that, and you have a strong nil collective, that can still be the case. So while all the athletic departments can all pay $20.5 million to athletes, they can get more to them with legitimate contracts from name, image, and likeness. And, you know, if you're Ohio State, or if you're USC and you've got tens of millions of dollars, you can keep doing what you're doing. Absolutely. If you're Northwestern, maybe Rutgers, you got a little smaller name, image, and likeness collective, not as much to go around. So I think I think the rich stay rich in this scenario, and they'll be able to get the players that they want and continue to do that. Now, moving forward, there's going to be legal battles still on all this just because this settlement is done. There's still other issues to hammer out. And the next step is, look, athletes are going to want to be considered employees of the university. That means they're going to want to unionize. They're going to want collective bargaining. That's all down the road. And the NCAA is going to want Congress to pass some laws to try and prevent that. So those are the next battles. We're not done with the craziness. I can't wait till actual football season starts. But anyway, that is a thumbnail description of everything that's been taking place. That's $2.8 billion worth of information for you right there. We love your comments on it. Hit me up on them with the comments on YouTube. Be sure to hit that free subscribe button down below, and you'll never miss an episode. Don't forget to share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten. That helps us out as well. And don't forget to go to our website, talkbig10.com. All of our podcasts go there. Scroll to the bottom. You get your school merchandise for your favorite Big Ten school. Get you ready for the 2025 season right there for your convenience at your fingertips. All right. We have a lot to do. It was an interesting weekend going into the weekend with the House settlement. It was also the weekend for Michigan's Spygate hearing with the NCAA, a surprise attendee. We'll talk about that, plus some bad news for Oregon going into the weekend. I'll have our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend as well. All that coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. NBA Finals, they're fantastic, and you can be part of it with FanDuel. Check out FanDuel right now because every night somebody's going to blow a 20-point lead, jump in with some live game action. SGA, Tyrese Halliburton, player props, take the overs on their stats, their points, their assists. You'll do well. Trust me on this. Been having a lot of fun with this. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, whether it's before tip-off or you want to jump in live action during the game with these player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. It's all out there. So everything's been heating up, ready to go. Same-game parlays. That can pay off. How about a $200 bonus in bets? Does that add to your excitement? If your first $5 bet wins, well, how do you get your first $5 bet? Well, you got to join. All right. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. I want to thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Thank you so much. Be sure to hit that free subscribe button down below, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And check out our website for podcasts and school merchandise at talkbig10.com. Well, I hope you had a delightful weekend, but I will tell you, I'm not so sure about Michigan football. Michigan and the NCAA wrapped up a 2-day hearing regarding former staffer CONNOR STALIONS' elaborate scouting and sign-stealing Spygate scandal. And that, of course, all fell apart in the middle of the Wolverines' undefeated national championship season of 2023. The star of that show, CONNOR STALIONS, he showed up. He was part of the hearing at NCAA headquarters in Indianapolis to talk to the Committee of Infractions. Very interesting. Now, I'm sure without having been there, and there's very little public information out about with this, but I'm as sure as I'm sitting here that Michigan invited him in there to fall on the sword. I guarantee that's exactly what, and I guarantee Stallions dutifully did it. I'm absolutely sure. I'm sure he went in there and he said, look, it was all me, CONNOR STALIONS. He'll continue to say Jim Harbaugh knew nothing about it. Sherrone Moore knew nothing about it. He's going to say nobody knew. It was just me. And they just happened to think I was really good at my job. That's what he's going to say. And we know this because that's all he's ever said about the matter. Stallions to this day, after everything he's gone through, still loves Michigan football more than life itself. He does. Say what you will about him, but you want a guy like that in a foxhole. If you're ever in trouble, he's not going to turn, and Michigan's in trouble. So I'm sure he would just sang a sweet song to the NCAA this weekend. Now, Under a previously released notice of allegations, which we went through here a couple months ago, here on Locked On Big Ten, the NCAA informed Michigan is facing 11 allegations. 6 are level 1. Those are the most serious kind that can get you in a lot of trouble and have things taken away from your program. The NCAA could come down with a punishment within 45 days from now, which will take us right up to the beginning of Big Ten Media Days, by the way, in Las Vegas. That'll be interesting timing as we officially kick off the 2025 football season. However, if this is a more complex situation, the NCAA could take up to another 3 months to come up with a verdict. And that would take us right into the middle of the 2025 season. The center issue may come down to the content of those 52 text messages that Sherrone Moore and CONNOR STALIONS had with each other, and they were deleted by Sherrone Moore, who was offensive coordinator at the time, the day the story broke in October of 2023. Delete. Now, those messages have since been retrieved and were part of the investigation. Again, Moore was the OC under Jim Harbaugh at the time. In my opinion, there had to be something. I don't know if it was super bad or if it was nothing, but there had to be something in those text messages, because Michigan recently self-imposed a 2-game suspension on Moore ahead of this hearing. They were hoping that will appease the NCAA, hoping that there will be no further damage. Now, the NCAA has already busted Harbaugh on a 4-year show cause penalty and a 1-year suspension for impermissible recruiting during the COVID pandemic. Moore was part of that impermissible recruiting contact, and he received a 1-game suspension at the time as well, which a 1-game suspension doesn't seem like much of the grand scheme of things, but it's a problem. It's a big problem for Michigan. Because in the eyes of the NCAA, Michigan is a repeat offender, and Moore may look like he's a repeat offender as well, and they may come down on him even more harshly, including recruiting restrictions, postseason bans. I know there's some people that say they'll take away wins or even the title. I don't think they will do that. But no matter how long this drags on, Michigan says the school's not going to be commenting anymore on this publicly until there's a final verdict from the NCAA. So I don't know if they caught which way the wind was blowing. I'm sure they could tell by the questions they were receiving this weekend in the hearing. But they're not going to say anything now until the final verdict comes out from the NCAA, nor should they. By the way, Michigan opens up the season August 30th versus New Mexico. Then they play Oklahoma at Oklahoma. That is Sherrone Moore's alma mater. He's going to coach those first 2 games. Then he's going to sit out. Michigan will self-impose Moore his 2 gamers for weeks 3 and week 4 versus Central Michigan and Nebraska. Stay tuned. Horrible news for the Oregon Ducks going into the weekend. Wide receiver EVAN STEWART. He could be done for the 2025 season before it even gets started. He was busy doing 7-on-7 drills last Tuesday, and apparently he tore a patellar tendon. We found out by the end of the week. So he was set to be the number 1 option for the Ducks on their offense this year. Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden, Terrence Ferguson, they're all gone. Stewart did post a glimmer of hope on X this weekend. He said the fans should not put a timeline on his injury, that he will be back soon. I don't know what that means. He also thanked everyone for well wishes and said he's on the road to recovery. However, a typical recovery for this injury is 6 to 12 months. So, I mean, even quick math by me, the most optimistic return date for him would be December. And at that point, you don't come back. You save the season. After transferring to Oregon last year, he did put up 48 catches, 613 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So he's going to be missed. With his absence, the Ducks need to fill that void. They do have Justice Lowe and Gary Bryant Jr. coming back, and there was that Florida State transfer Malik Benson who's coming. They have 5-star freshman Decorian Moore, who may get some pressure to play and play a lot right away. We've discussed him quite a bit on this podcast. He's garnered a lot of attention on the recruiting trail before he ended up committing to the Ducks. And also, we have some good news recruiting for the UCLA Bruins. 4-star offensive tackle Micah Champ-Smith. Nationally, he's a top 50 2026 recruit. He's the 7th-ranked offensive tackle. He is committed to UCLA. Look, this is Deshaun Foster's highest-ranked pledge of the class. 6'3", 320-pound body, ready to go from Vero Beach, Florida. Chose UCLA over Alabama, Illinois, Ohio State, South Carolina, Tennessee, a lot of good schools. He chose UCLA. That's a good get. That's a really good get. All right, coming up, we've got our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. That's what we would like to do on Mondays. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Big Ten. Time now for our weekly feature that we always do. Mondays, we do our top 10 Big Ten observations for the weekend. Tuesday, tweets. Wednesdays, our power rankings. Thursdays, Big Ten classics. Friday, we like to make picks, look at odds, futures, all that good stuff. So if you're audio only, no sweat. We'll put this on screen. We'll describe it in detail. It's basically a top 10 list, and we feather it in from 10 to number 1. So here we go. Let's take a look. The sports season is slowing down on the Big Ten, so I had to put in some other things that caught my attention over the weekend. I do this from time to time. The Belmont horse race, I'm putting that in there. That deserves a mention. The Sovereignty and Journalism, these two great horses, their history against each other in the Derby. Journalism ran maybe the greatest race I've ever seen in the Preakness. They go head-to-head, and the strength of Sovereignty down the stretch, winning that race of the Belmont. The Sovereignty got the first and third leg of the Triple Crown. Journalism gets the second leg. It was phenomenal. Pretty good. Sometimes we get disappointed when there can't be a Triple Crown winner, but this was a good horse racing season. All right, let's see what we got in here. Some more Big Ten stuff. Yes, Ohio State football. Talk about recruiting. They got themselves that 4-star running back, FAVOUR AKIH. We discussed him last week. Some schools he was considering. He was Ohio State was on the short list. He has gone ahead and committed to Ohio State to play for Ryan Day. So he's very excited about that. That came in at number 9. I got a list of a couple of recruits that I want to mention here on this segment. So number 8, UCLA football. And we just mentioned it a moment ago. I mean, to get Micah Smith, Champ Smith, a 4-star, big body going out there. That's going to be a good get for the Bruins out there in the Rose Bowl. And as long as we're talking about UCLA, let's take a look at USC. Now, I know this technically wasn't the weekend. We do top 10 Big Ten observations over the weekend, but USC did make a big splash earlier in the week last week. I did want to mention in tight end Mark Bowman, a 5-star tight end. This was a player that USC and Lincoln Riley going back and forth trying to recruit. Dan Lanning and Oregon, among other schools. And I mentioned a few times here recently that a lot of these kids that are being recruited, both out of high school and trying to be flipped or poached, if you will, out of the transfer portal, USC and Oregon are going after a lot of the same guys. And it's getting split up. Although, obviously, you know by now, USC has the number 1 recruiting class for the class of 2026, and they add a 5-star Mark Bowman to it. Talk about the rich get richer. That's a good get. They continue to pull in some big-time talent there at USC. Meanwhile, I put in here Penn State's James Franklin because we spent the beginning of this podcast talking about evening up the playing field with this new revenue share deal and how everybody's going to pay the same amount. And James Franklin's comments is, why does everything have to be even? And I can understand his viewpoint because, as we've discussed here on this podcast before, James Franklin a few years ago, they were a little bit behind, to be honest, in name image. Their name, image, and likeness collective was a little slow out of the gate. They were about a year behind schedule, and they were behind other people. Now, they had a lot of talent. They go 10-2 every year. They were missing out on some people because their Nil collective really wasn't up to stuff. Now it is now. So James Franklin's probably sitting there going, man, we worked so hard to get this thing up and rolling. And now everybody wants to try and even the playing field. That's probably where he's coming from. I'll look into this more, that comment, and kind of get the background of it. We might discuss that further later here on Locked On Big Ten. But I thought it was interesting. It's not a criticism, a plus or minus either way. I just thought it was an interesting comment by James Franklin, and it made me think. Comments that make you think just a little bit, I like those. Meanwhile, number 5, UCLA baseball. I want to go back to Saturday in their super regional against UTSA. They fell behind 2-0 in this game, ended up winning 5-2. They gave up a run in the first and second inning, and then their starter, along with 3 other relievers, shut out the rest of the way. Just absolutely shut it down. So that was pretty good by their pitching staff. And then their Sunday game, more pitching. As we are taping this podcast for Monday right now, they're up 4-0 in the 8th. So, I mean, how many innings in a row? 8, 7, quick math. Gone like 15 innings without giving up a run as they're making their march to the College World Series. So I wanted to give them a mention here in our top 10. And they're just kind of a follow-up from UCLA baseball, getting the 5-2 win. Trying to get to they win today. They go to the College World Series, and their pitching has been phenomenal. So I want to give them a shout out here. Meanwhile, I put the Michigan NCAA hearing at number 3. We've been hearing about it. It's been coming. We've been talking about Spygate since 2023. I'm just glad it's over. At least that part is. We still have to wait and hear what the NCAA has to say, whether Sherrone Moore gets a bigger suspension, scholarships taken away, whatever the case may be. I'm just glad we got this part over with so we all can move on a little bit. I'm sure Michigan fan is glad to have this over with. I know Ohio State fan is just eating it up. They love it. They like got their popcorn out, checking the internet every 5 minutes. And then I put on here the NCAA House settlement. Here's another thing. We've been talking about this for months. Coaches didn't know what to do, how to recruit, how to get players played, what were the new rules going to be, who was going to be allowed to be on the team with roster limits and all this stuff. Everybody's thrilled that this thing finally got done. Again, we were told at the latest it was going to be done like the first week of April. Then they couldn't. They had to push it because the judge wanted to make sure these roster limits didn't affect anybody currently on the team. She didn't want any jobs to be lost, any players to lose any roster spots, because the players were the plaintiffs here. She didn't want any of them to be harmed. So send everybody back to the drawing board. They had to come up with something. And now here finally in the first week of June, they get it all settled. They get it out there. So we're glad that that's done. And now the schools have to scramble to get this in place by July 1. It's go time. It's the new era of college athletics. And, the last thing I put here on our list, the House settlement and the Michigan hearing and all that stuff, I put Big Ten football is 80 days away. Something to look forward to on the football field that we can actually talk about. Very excited about this. Rutgers, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska all open up on that Thursday, August 28th. That is 80 days away before we have some actual Big Ten teams playing football. So I wanted to top that off with our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. Let me know what you think. Did I leave anything out? Let me know. Be glad to hear from you. All right. There are many ways for you to interact with this podcast. There's Twitter or X at TalkBig10, talkbig10.com. All of our podcasts go there, plus links to buy merchandise from your favorite Big Ten school, all right there at the bottom of that page. Be sure to subscribe before you go. It's free. It's just a click of a little button, and you're good. We're making a push to 20,000 subscribers. That way, you'll never miss an episode as we get closer and closer to college football season. And thank you if you've already done that. Always ask you to go back and check out a previous podcast. If you missed one, if you're not with us every day, you can be. You can go back and check out another episode of Locked On Big Ten, either on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts, or on our website, talkbig10.com. Also invite you to go back for a second, listen to check out Brian Smith, The Portal Show. All the rumors and entries and signings, he's got that covered. Check out The Portal Show. You can be the most informed fan on the block with all that information. The Portal on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. That'll do it for us. We got a busy, busy week. I will tell you, there is a pundit out there that thinks Sherrone Moore is going to get hammered. We're going to talk about that a little. I'll tell you who it is. And later in the week, we've heard from all the commissioners about the college football playoffs, except for Tony Petitti recently. Been very quiet. I think it's time for him to talk. We'll discuss that later on this week as well. All that coming up here on Locked On Big Ten. Thanks for checking us out. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman. Talk to you next time.